am a 45-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife, who's 44, for 15 years. We have two wonderful kids together. I never imagined that I'd be sitting here, pouring my heart out, feeling like a stranger in my own life. But here we are. My wife and I weren't always this distant. In fact, we've known each other since childhood. Back then, we were just two kids running in the same circles, but never really close. It wasn't until high school that our paths truly intertwined, all thanks to our mutual friends dating each other. Suddenly, we were spending more time together, talking, laughing, genuinely enjoying each other's company. The truth is, I had a crush on her long before our friends got together. I never had the nerve to say anything until one day I did. I asked her out, and to my surprise, she said yes. That moment felt like the beginning of something beautiful. For the last 2 years of high school, we were inseparable. We had plans, big ones. We even applied to the same colleges. But life had other ideas. The college I got into didn't have her preferred program, and the one she got into didn't have mine. Strangely enough, my college actually did offer her program, but she told me she never saw herself there. Maybe I should have questioned that more, but I didn't. We tried to make long distance work, but it didn't last. The late night calls turned into missed calls. The visits became less frequent, and before we knew it, we had grown apart. It was painful, but we moved on. At least, I thought I had. Years later, after I had graduated and started my career, I came home for a visit. That's when fate, or maybe something crueler, brought us together again. It was a chance meeting, one that changed everything. Seeing her after all those years stirred something in me. We started talking, catching up, and before I knew it, we were right back where we left off. It felt like destiny. It felt right. Not long after, she moved into my apartment. I won't lie, it happened fast. But when you love someone, you don't question the speed. My career was stable, and she was about to graduate. It felt like all the pieces were finally falling into place. But there was one piece that didn't quite fit. His name was Chris. Chris was charming, confident, and attractive, the kind of guy who had an effortless pull over women. I didn't trust him from the start. Maybe it was jealousy, or maybe it was instinct. I'd see the way he looked at her, the way he made her laugh just a little too much, and something in my gut told me to be careful. When I brought it up, she laughed it off. "He's just a friend," she said. "You have nothing to worry about," she reassured me. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So I swallowed my doubts and told myself that I was just being insecure. We got married, had 2 amazing kids, and built a life together. But as the years went by, things started to shift. Work got busier, responsibilities piled up, and somewhere in the chaos, we lost us. I always thought love was enough, that the foundation we built would hold strong. But I started noticing small changes. She was distant. The little moments, the stolen kisses, the random "I love you" texts, the way she used to light up when I walked through the door, had faded. Every attempt I made to reconnect was met with indifference or irritation. Then, one evening, I came home to hear laughter from the kitchen. I walked in to find her washing dishes, and there, sitting comfortably at the kitchen island, was Chris. The conversation stopped the moment they saw me. That moment was a warning, but I ignored it. I convinced myself that I was overthinking things, that my exhaustion was making me see things that weren't there. But deep down, I knew. The distance between us grew. Conversations turned into arguments. The warmth in her eyes when she looked at me was gone. And then, one night, I finally asked, "Is there someone else?" Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of not trusting her, of being paranoid, of trying to control her. She dredged up past insecurities, cutting me down in ways only someone who truly knows you can. And then, she shut down completely. She didn't speak to me for a week. That was the moment I realized something was definitely going on. I had to know the truth. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I set up cameras in the house. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to feel like an idiot for even suspecting her. I prayed that when I checked the footage, it'd see nothing out of the ordinary. Just a wife who was tired, a relationship going through a rough patch, and a husband who needed to work harder. For 2 months, I checked the footage religiously. Nothing. Slowly, I convinced myself that I was just being insecure. I stopped checking the cameras, started making more effort with my wife, and told myself that things would get better. Then one day, I got a notification on my phone. There was unusual activity in the house. I opened the app, not expecting anything. But then, I saw it. A pair of unfamiliar black shoes near the door. My heart pounded. I scrolled through the feeds, checking the bedroom empty, the kitchen empty. Then I saw her. She was stepping out of the laundry room, and behind her was Chris. She was adjusting her clothes. He was buckling his pants. I froze. The air in my lungs vanished. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. I kept replaying it, hoping, praying that I had somehow misunderstood, that maybe there was an innocent explanation. There wasn't. I wanted to rush home. I wanted to scream at them, to demand an explanation. But then I thought about my kids. I thought about what it would mean for them to lose their family in one night. So instead, I sat there, in my office, in silence. And I cried. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at that screen. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. But I do know that something inside me broke that day. The woman I had loved since high school, the mother of my children, the person I had built a life with, betrayed me. And the worst part? She still had no idea that I knew. Now, I sit here, typing this, wondering what my next move should be. Do I confront her? Do I stay quiet and gather more evidence? Do I tell her that she destroyed me? That the one thing I feared the most, the one thing she promised would never happen, just did? I don't know. But what I do know is that the life I thought I had never really existed. And that's the hardest truth to face. When I finally calmed down, I knew what I had to do. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white as I drove through the dark, empty streets. The weight of betrayal sat heavy on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. But most of all, I wanted answers. Instead of heading straight home, I made a detour. I called a family friend, someone I trusted completely, and asked if they could watch the kids for a while. I told them my wife and I needed to have a serious conversation, one that couldn't wait. They didn't ask many questions, only assured me they would take care of the kids for as long as needed. As I pulled into our driveway, I took a deep breath. The house looked the same as it always had, warm, inviting, the porch light glowing softly against the night. But tonight, it felt like a stranger's home, like I no longer belonged. I stepped inside, and immediately, the familiar smell of her cooking wrapped around me. My favorite meal, something she hadn't made in years. The irony wasn't lost on me. It felt like a prisoner's last supper. a pathetic attempt at normalcy when everything was about to crumble. She greeted me with a smile, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "Hey, honey, you're home early," she said, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. I couldn't force myself to return the smile. My throat was tight, my heart hammering in my chest. Instead, I simply sat at the table, placing my phone in front of me, screen down. My hands trembled slightly, but I clenched them into fists, steadying myself. A heavy silence settled between us. She must have sensed that something was wrong because her expression shifted, concern flickering in her eyes. "Is everything okay?" she asked, taking a cautious step forward. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, slowly, I turned the phone over and slid it across the table. "Press play," I said, my voice hoarse. Her fingers hovered over the screen before she reluctantly tapped it. The video began playing, grainy security footage from our friend's house. Her and Chris sneaking out of the laundry room together, looking guilty, disheveled. The timestamp on the video made it worse. This wasn't just a recent betrayal. This had been going on for years. I watched her face as she saw herself in the video. The color drained from her cheeks, her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. The air between us grew suffocating. Finally, I found my voice, though it came out in a whisper. "Why?" At first, she tried to deny it. She shook her head, forced a dry laugh, tried to say it wasn't what it looked like. But there was no way out of this. Not when the evidence was staring her in the face. "Don't lie to me," I warned, my voice sharper now. Tears welled in her eyes as she finally broke. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she choked out. I never wanted you to find out like this." I felt sick. My stomach twisted as I stared at the woman I had shared my life with for over a decade. "How long?" Her lips trembled. 3 years, she whispered. 3 years. Nearly a fifth of our marriage. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into the wood. The room blurred around me. I had suspected something for a while. Late nights, distant gazes, excuses that didn't quite add up. But I had convinced myself I was paranoid, that she wouldn't do that to me. I let out a shaky breath. Was it just physical, or was there more? Her silence was deafening. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Do you love him?" She hesitated, too long. And then, finally, she nodded. A small, pathetic nod that shattered the last piece of hope I had been holding onto. But she wasn't done. Not yet. "There's something else," she murmured, her voice barely audible. She wiped her tears, avoiding my gaze. I might be pregnant." The words hit me like a freight train. My vision blurred. My ears rang. For a second, I thought I might pass out. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. I needed air. Space. Something to stop the walls from closing in. I turned away from her, running a hand through my hair. "I need to think," I muttered. "I'm sorry," she said again, but the words felt hollow. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I went upstairs, my legs heavy, my heart even heavier. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. A million thoughts raced through my mind. Anger, pain, regret. Was there something I could have done differently? Was I a bad husband? Had I been too blind? Then, the darkest thoughts crept in. What was the point of anything anymore? The woman I loved had betrayed me. The family I had built was crumbling. I imagined disappearing, just vanishing into nothingness, leaving all the pain behind. It seemed easier than dealing with this. I sat on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. The thoughts grew louder, suffocating. Then, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, my hands still shaking. A message from my daughter. "Good night, Dad. I love you." A simple sentence. Just 5 words. But those 5 words saved me. I stared at them, tears spilling down my face. My kids. My beautiful, innocent children. They needed me. They didn't deserve to lose their father because of their mother's betrayal. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I wiped my face, stood up, and made a decision. I was going to fight. Not for her, not for our marriage, but for them. The next morning, I called my lawyer. The divorce process was long and brutal. She fought for custody at first, but eventually, she gave up, choosing to start her new life with Chris instead. The courts granted me full custody of our children. A year later, the divorce was finalized. She packed her things and moved out. I watched from the window as she left, her car disappearing down the street. For a long time, I didn't know how to feel. There was no satisfaction in seeing her go. No joy in winning the legal battle. Just emptiness. But then, something unexpected happened. Life moved on. I found peace in small moments. Picking my kids up from school, making them breakfast in the morning, laughing at their silly jokes. I started rediscovering who I was outside of being a husband. One evening, my daughter came up to me, curling up beside me on the couch. "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked, looking up at me with those innocent eyes. I thought about it. Was I happy? Maybe not yet. Maybe not completely. But I was healing. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that someday I would be. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. People betray us, hurt us in ways we never thought possible. But even in the darkest moments, there's a light if we're willing to look for it. My kids are my light. And they've shown me that no matter what happens, life is still worth fighting for.